The shortening of the DRS zones in Baku came as a big surprise to many drivers, and they were shocked in Miami when the FIA announced they would be doing the exact same thing. The opinion of the fans was that the action in Baku was disappointing, and with reduced DRS in Miami this year, the race could go the same way. Why have the FIA shortened the DRS zones? What are the drivers saying? And is it actually as bad as everyone thinks it is? We'll answer these questions and more, so don't go anywhere. First off, I want to start by talking about the Baku Grand Prix and the difficulty of overtaking. I'm sure you've all heard by now that the drivers last weekend were very unhappy about the DRS zones being shortened. DRS has become a bit of a crutch for Formula 1 drivers to overtake. As the sport has developed and the cars have generated more and more downforce, following closely behind a competitor has got more challenging. When you create downforce, you create turbulent air behind your car, which messes with the aerodynamics of the person following. On the straight, you get a slipstream because the car in front of you has pushed the air aside, but everywhere else, it is a problem. Turbulent air reduces the amount of downforce your car is creating because it messes with how your aerodynamics are working. Less downforce means worse cornering and more tyre wear. Turbulent air also makes it harder to cool your car, as the air gets heated as it comes off the car in front. You need clear, calm air to cool an F1 car's engine, brakes and tyres. Formula 1 cars can't follow each other nose to tail because they just stop working properly in the turbulent air. If the drivers could, they would, but they just can't. Instead, they're forced to hold back behind the car in front, and this is where DRS comes in. It gives you enough of a top speed advantage that you can catch up with the car in front and make an overtake. I see all the comments from people saying they want DRS gone, and I'm with you, as are the FIA and the top of F1 management. But at the moment, if it was just completely gone, the race would be a complete procession with everything being decided in qualifying on Saturday. So in Baku, when the DRS zones were shortened, many of the drivers weren't happy because it made it harder to overtake. In 2022, there was a grand total of 23 overtakes on track. These numbers don't include the first lap overtakes, by the way. The race wasn't hugely memorable. Mostly, it was just a lot of cars porpoising on the rough street track. This year, there was the exact same number of overtakes again, 23. 5 of those were cars passing Hülkenberg in the last few laps after he went almost an entire race distance on the hard tyre. Basically, I understand the driver complaints about DRS being shortened, making overtaking more difficult, but maybe that isn't actually the problem with the track. Perhaps there's something else making the Baku Grand Prix less exciting in recent years. Before the new regulations, it averaged 55 overtakes a race. I haven't got the answer to why it has dropped off so much with the new regulations. My theory would be that the current tyres don't drop off in performance quick enough. They last far too long, making a one-stop strategy the best choice at pretty much every race. Without variation in tyre strategy, you don't have cars at a pace disadvantage due to tyre wear, making overtaking much harder without DRS. What do you think? Perhaps Pirelli have done too good a job with the new tyres. Anyway, after the Baku Grand Prix, with its limited overtaking, the drivers are furious that the DRS zones are being shortened again in Miami. In Miami, the first 2 of 3 DRS zones have had their activation points move further up the road. The first DRS activation point on the flat-out run to turn 11 has been pushed back from 30 meters after turn 9 to 105 meters after the corner, reducing the DRS zone by 75 meters. The second DRS zone on the back straight has also been shortened by 75 meters and now starts 525 meters after turn 16 instead of 450. The final DRS zone on the short start-finish straight, which has had a negligible effect on overtaking anyway, has been left untouched. The tweaks have been made on a circuit-by-circuit basis and therefore are not related to the DRS reduction at last weekend's Azerbaijan Grand Prix, where the main straight's DRS zone was shortened by 100 meters. Last year, there were 55 overtakes at the inaugural Miami Grand Prix, not counting first lap overtakes. So hopefully we're in for a more exciting race this weekend. Last weekend's hard tyre, the C3, will be the medium tyre in Miami, and the C2 tyre will be the hard. It's too early in the season to be able to compare the tyre wear of different tyres, but hopefully the cars can't do an entire race length on the C2 tyre. A bit of extra tyre wear would make for a more exciting race, but the Miami track was resurfaced before this weekend, so don't get your hopes up. A new track surface normally means it is less abrasive, allowing the tyres to last longer. So will the shortening of the DRS zones in Miami make a difference? Or will we see the same thing happen in Baku, where it didn't really make a difference? All I have is anecdotal evidence for this, but the shortening of the first DRS zone may make a difference. Cars were easily passing each other on the straight with DRS in that first zone. I don't know if shortening it by 75 meters will make so much of a difference that you can't overtake, or if the point of overtaking will just be much closer to the end of the zone. We'll have to wait and see. The same point stands for the second DRS zone as well. Overtaking was really easy at that point on the track last year, so it's hard to say how much of a difference the change will make. I think it's best for me to now defer to the greater knowledge of the actual F1 drivers and team principals. After all, they're paid a hell of a lot of money to know this stuff. One driver who probably won't have to worry about DRS anyway is Max Verstappen, whose RB19 is so much faster than the rest of the grid that even without DRS, he could probably make overtakes with ease. I would prefer, of course, that we could race without DRS, but that's not possible, Verstappen said ahead of the first of 3 American races in 2023. I think for us, it's a little bit different. If the car is faster, let's say when you have to come through the field from the back, it doesn't really matter how long the zone is, you'll get the car ahead. But when the pace is 1 or 2 tenths different, you can see that in Baku. I think once you're in a bit of a DRS train, there's no chance. The DRS zone is just not big enough to have a run. So what causes that? Is the DRS zone too short, or the cars are not good enough to follow closely? I think it's a bit of a combination of both. Max isn't the only driver to mention the cars not being able to follow closely. In this second season of the new regulations, the teams have developed their cars, making them produce far more downforce, and therefore more turbulent air. As I said earlier, this is a bad thing for trying to follow the car in front, and that makes overtaking far harder. Max goes on to say that the current regulations could be part of the issue as well. Ground effect floors work best when you can run super hard suspension, because you get a more consistent level of ground clearance. With everyone running the same suspension, all the cars have to take the same line, meaning there's very little space for racing line creativity when attempting to pass the car in front. The cars are probably too heavy, they're too stiff, so you can't really run a curb to try and find a bit of a different line. Everyone is driving more or less the same line nowadays because of just how the cars work and how stiff the suspension is. While Max might not need DRS due to the advantage the Red Bull car has over everyone else, Lando Norris's McLaren car needs as much of it as it can get. "We've been through it with the FIA. It has been discussed," Norris said, who sat alongside Verstappen in the press conference. "We're the slowest on the straights, so I'd love DRS every chance we have. I think that's something to just review. I think we look back at last year, maybe at times you could have shortened it, but as cars evolve and get more downforce generally, it always makes the racing a little bit worse. Cars are becoming more efficient at the same time, so you need that little extra to help you." Lando also goes on to say that it isn't just DRS to blame for the lack of overtaking. Like Max said, there's certain things we're just not able to do nowadays that we could do maybe a few years ago, which made it easier to overtake, like take curbs and do different lines. So it's not as simple as just DRS, there's many things to try and improve and do better. The easy thing to say in this situation is that one team should just run softer suspension, take a bit of curb and overtake everyone who can't do that. The problem is that the car would then be slower over a whole lap. There are obviously a lot of issues that are stopping the races from being packed full of overtaking. The tyres are too resistant to wear, the cars produce too much turbulent air, the ground effect floors require stiff suspension, which then limits your ability to take curb and drive a different line to your opponent. Can anything be done about all of that? Probably, but it definitely isn't going to happen quickly. What do you think then? Is shortening the DRS zones actually a problem? Or does something else have to change to get more overtaking in the sport? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.